Okay, we've got started. So I think based on what we looked through, the most it would be best to start with the question how you managed to sustain for so long as an artist-run space. But was it the help of volunteers, or were there the interested funders on sort of that were coming in on a rolling basis? Because it's exceptional. There are artist-run spaces in Canada, is Western Front, for example. But in those circumstances, they're supported by government and so forth. And in US, the situation was kind of different. So it's kind of a wonder how you managed to survive and to sustain and to expand for so many years.
Yeah, well, a lot of the industry came in with their new devices and stuff like that, and we had a big reputation, and we were the only sustainable game in town. So we were well known with many people in Los Angeles, and the industry would come in and give us their stuff and to see what we would do with it. And like Viacom, they put in a couple of $100,000, and so it was like magic. We just sort of stumbled along. We quit writing grants to the NEA and all that kind of stuff because you know, you have to wait for a half a year to see if you get it, and you can't build a program on that. So we just worked with the industry, came in and put in money, and watched as we got the National Information Infrastructure Award, several awards. They had to create new categories for it, like telecollaboration and Lifetime Achievement Awards and Guggenheims and stuff like that. And I don't know, it was just a magical wonderland, and enough money came in to keep the light on, and all the Viacom put in T1 lines, you know, massive bandwidth, and so, you know, we became a part of interval research, and Xerox Park was interested in us, and a bunch of other organizations, and they would come in and pay for stuff, and like MCI, global thing, and corporations, and so we had a community which full of talent that could just, you know, fill the time. And well, after we didn't sleep for 10 years.
Looks
So and then it wore Sherrie down, but she was with the MS. So in the last 10th New Year's Eve around the World Celebration, 1999, entering 1990, wait, no, 2000, wait, 99, yeah, entering 2000, we had to shut it all down after that, and be a caregiver for the next 13 years. But it just happened. We were a magnet, a dynamic laboratory, bleeding edge stuff, and we weren't open every day like a cafe. But you know, the people came in, they ran the cafe, and they kept the money. You know, they made the coffee, they brought the cakes and all that kind of stuff, and we didn't have to deal with that. So no, it was just something that wanted to happen. And it was a magnet to lots of artists and people who were writing applications and software and VR stuff. And the authors, Vermal, all that stuff was demoed at our place for the first time in public. And it was just a wildfire.
And well, the way you see it, of those donors, corporations, and so forth that brought money in, what was their like main motivation? They considered ECI as this kind of
well, like MTV, Viacom, New York. They were they got wind of us, and they saw the stuff that we were doing, and we just blew them away. So um, the controller of Viacom just fell in love with us, and they just they bought all their equipment for their side, and we started doing things, and it was a bit dubious to but finally at one point we did this big event, and it ended with the MTV dancers in New York and our place dancing together, and we thought, well, I think we're done here, you know. And so we just sort of broke off from them. We didn't go back. We didn't answer the phone anymore after that. But it was good because they put a lot of stuff in place. And their interest was the future of interactive television, you know. That's what we were. Only we weren't television, you know. We were, you know, diverse community of talented people, you know, pushing the ball forward. We always push the ball forward.
And like, was there an expectation that you will be promoting their product, or?
Yeah, it was. We didn't want to go there, so we just we needed the money, and we played with them, and they were happy, and we were you know, they were putting, you know, a lot of resources into our place that we probably never would have managed to do. And but we had a good part of it before we got in touch with them. But they put in new synthesizers. They went to the industry and got synthesizers and speakers and all kinds of equipment from you know, MTV seducing them to give them the stuff, and then they gave the stuff to themselves and to us, and it kind of snowballed. And so, yeah, we got a lot out of it. But culturally, you know, MTV was not. We weren't too much into watching MTV, but they were nice, and they were sincere, and but what they were getting out of it was ideas and models for these new ways of being in the world. So, but I don't think they ever did anything with it because it was too complex. And then the internet came along in '94 and stuff, and everybody went there, and now everybody's living in a world of capital surveillance. And this AI stuff is pretty scary because we don't seem to be able to manage things very well where there's risk. There's a lot of risk in this. So I don't know what it's going to be another 15, 20 years down the road. Could be pretty scary. Everything you're seeing could be, they have to do what they do with some things, and that is put a disclaimer on anything AI writes down in the lower right corner. You know, this is not real.
So the money people, they were not trying to define the programming, or?
No, we had them by the hook in the nose. We were dragging them down the garden path. And so, except for that last thing we did, and they brought out the MTV dancers. And that big event was hosted by one of the video DJs who was barking out stuff, and it was just kind of, and the people on our side was yelling back at them saying, this is, you don't know what Electronic Cafe is about, people getting together, not you know, this kind of stuff. So that was the time to sever the relationship, because the next place it would go would just be into the weirdness, you know. But they couldn't, broadcast can't pull this off. It's just still television. So that's where it is. The internet will makes these other things possible. But the internet's still not done. You know, we were in 1977 with the Satellite Arts Project, we were creating the image as place, and people in different locations were occupying the screen at the same time, you know, an immersive, that was the first, you know, immersive reality. And they don't have that together, and they want to go to VR, they want to go to this meta, they want to go to this turning, instead of a person appearing in the image space, it's now a avatar puppet. And now you have to buy your furniture, and you'll have to buy a lamp and a goldfish dish and whatever your thing is, you know, while you're walking around with this thing over your face. You know, I suppose at some point people are going to be exiting 20-story buildings out a window, you know, because they're not seeing where they are in the real world. So that's all kind of not the kind, you know, the fantasy is some sort of beam spraying device that puts you and your friends in the room together, and you're you, and they are they, and everyone who occupies that space is a little different because they'll see the friends in their space. Now I'll see my friends in my space, and it'll be look like you, and I'll look like me, not some kind of a, you know, robot. So, but the beat goes on, and but that's going to require a whole bunch of technology hasn't been invented yet. It has a lot of challenges to the physics, but I suppose it might. But I don't think I'll be around to see it. My tenure is coming to end in a decade or so. Sitting here 75 years old.
And just again to specify, the artists and members of community and other people of expertise or just enthusiasts, they were participating in the life of ECI without any financial reward. No one had a salary there, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. No, it filled up with people say, what's tonight? Okay, let's set it up. So it was a laboratory, you know, a functioning, living, exciting collaboratory. And a lot of famous talent, you know, was there sweeping the floors.
Well, that's again fascinating, because today with kind of venues that host experimental music or experimental art, the main problem to bring artists in is that they don't have any financial reward, really. They barely survive. So
right.
your example is just exceptional. And back to the 70s, could you tell a bit about the meeting, the first meeting with David that I wasn't aware of?
You know, I don't even remember having a conversation with him. And during that Satellite Arts Project, we put staff together of gifted people, you know, video artists and Ant Farm and Optic Nerve, Sherrie's video group. And people just started showing up, and people dropped in, like Paul Horn and other people. We turn around and there's Paul Horn. He wants to play with the satellite echo. It's a quarter of a second. It's not really a big deal, but so NASA really screwed up, because the satellite, this experimental satellite where they put out proposals, the government was going to stop funding NASA for developing telecommunication satellites. They wanted to turn it over to the industry. So NASA made this broadcast satellite, and their first, and it was a problem child. It had lots of problems. So we were supposed to have, we had test dates in July, where we linked up with the West Coast NASA headquarters, actually. And we're doing tests with what this, we made a split screen, and we were live on one side and the other picture was the other guy. And we were testing the time delay. I mean, we knew when we were doing that, but it was the only way to manifest it, that satellites wouldn't be the thing, because they're 22,000 miles in space if they're in a geosynchronous orbit. So it takes 1/8 of a second to get up and 1/8 of a second to get down. And so anyway, people just, so the first day we all showed up to set up the light. We did it outside. We weren't going to be in a studio because we wanted to, we didn't want to have that TV studio look. So the first day we didn't complete setting up the lighting or setting all the monitors around so that the performers could have their backs to each other but still see how they're relating. And we had to reverse the scan on all of the monitors because they're not, when you stand in front of a mirror and raise your right hand and move to the right, your mirror right hand goes up and moves to the right. On TV, it's reversed, so the words aren't backwards. So if you went to the right on TV, you'd go to the left. This is something Nam June got wrong. Nam June's Good Morning, Mr. Orwell is everything we did that we showed him 7 years before. And Bruce Cunningham was put in front of a TV with the satellite echo. And they said, this is the first man in 1984 to dance with himself. But they didn't reverse the scan. So anyway. But so the second day, the satellite went down. And then it rained. And then on the third day, a farmer outside of the Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland, the other coast, we were on the NASA facility. The powers to, and that's where they kept track of all the deep space vehicles. And they had a power line going to it that was not documented, and it was under the ground, and it crossed through a farmer's field. And he was there with a backhoe, and he was digging, and he severed the cable and turned off everything at the Goddard Space Flight Center, but the toilets and this. And so they were gone. Then oh, and that also blew out the uplink, the Klystron tube to send to the satellite. So it was a disaster. And fortunately, we did the proof of concept with the first day of just sort of walking through and getting the dancers to jump in the pool and acclimate to the little delay to synchronize themselves. And so we never got the connection with the East Coast again. So NASA gave us another day, and that was, and the satellite was working again. And all we could do was send our signal up and bounce it back down to ourselves. So that's why we did the time delay dance as the last part. And that was it. So it made me appreciate how dangerous it might be to get on top of a NASA rocket and launch into space, you know what I mean? So anyway, we got proof of concept, but we didn't get anywhere close to the amazing scores and performance scores that we had designed and developed. Big storyboards with all these different things we wanted to achieve. So it was just sort of a walkthrough without everything being set up, the lighting, all that kind of stuff. So we got what we got and moved on. And then after that, we did Hole in Space. You know that. Like New York, yeah. And then as we approached 1984, we'd kept looking at all of the emerging technology prototypes and stuff like that. And so we worked with Lee and Community Memory with their new interface, and they worked with us, and we kludged together all of these devices so that, you know, we had a multimedia network in 1984 with all these capabilities and keyword searchable pictorial databases and all that kind of stuff. So we were way out there. And all that worked for 7 weeks. And then we'd reach the limits of models of creating these things and then have to tear them down. Kids wrote letters, we want the electronic cafe. And some of the cafes wanted to keep the stuff, but it was $70,000 worth of equipment in each place. And so we said, screw this, we've reached the limits of models. And so we started building Electronic Cafe International, which opened and never closed for 10 years. And then everybody just came. And people from Argentina, and we did hookups with the Russians, and they had a cafe. And the Inuit Eskimos didn't have a cafe, but they had a video phone, and the Australian Aborigines, we hooked up with them and hooked up with everybody. And all the other locations, there were big installations in Copenhagen and Paris and stuff like that. And eventually it all kind of wound down because everybody got tired. But yeah, the New Year's around the World celebrations we'd start at 3 a.m. in the morning with Australia and go, not every time zone. And there's some time zones that are a half hour, you know, like 1:30 and 2:30 and things like that. And that was always great. And so yeah, so we did the last one, and then we just closed up and you know, had a different life trajectory to take care of. And then I got this mountain of stuff. But it was a good run. And but there's still a lot to be done, I think. And I think we're getting you know, the cell phones and all, it's all a great thing, but I'm not too sure what it's doing to kids, and it sort of promotes the pathologies of celebrity, you know, being famous or being an influencer. But there's a ton of good stuff, a ton of really, really, really great stuff. But there's all of this sort of kind of psychological dark side. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So again, trying in case we can recover anything. So the first encounter with David Rosenblum, was it just an occasional one? You didn't really work on anything back in 17?
No, he just came in and turned the telemetry off the dancers into sound. That was his job. That provided the soundtrack to the dance. The music you hear is David making it. And the source of the music was the telemetry from the dancers moving their muscles. They had devices, and as they moved, signals changed, and they were radioed wirelessly over to a receiver, and then David just assigned musical tones to that data with a synthesizer.
Don't you remember what was the synthesizer he was using?
I don't know. 77. I don't know what it would be. maybe something he made. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, because 77 makes sense. He was a professor at York University in Toronto, but in 77 he was on sabbatical and worked with Don Buchla a lot on the West Coast.
Yeah, that's how Richard Lowenberg probably ran into him.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Richard Lowenberg's he was he scanned, you know, he kept in touch with stuff. So I don't know how they met, but Richard dragged him in and he sat down and did what he was told. And I don't think I had a conversation. In fact, I don't think I had a conversation with him at the Electronic Cafe. He was a little quiet kind of guy.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't even remember revisiting or reminding him or asking if he remembered the Satellite Arts Project in '77. I don't even know if he made the connection. He must have.
Yeah.
But I don't remember having a conversation with him.
Yeah,
I kind of thought he didn't like me or something.
Well, maybe he was all in the ideas concept space or whatever is the way he calls it.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was in a zone when he was on another planet.
Yeah, again, this kind of episode is quite a revelation again, because I was putting the archive together. There was no single record for that engagement, and he also didn't share that he was somewhat a part of the project. And I wonder why. That's an important, I think, line for a CV that he gathers. Yeah, perhaps he should be playing, I think, with Buchla 300. That should be the time when Buchla already.
Oh yeah, probably, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it would be awesome if there would be some kind of program or whatever notes regarding that time.
Oh, when I took your links that you gave me to David's website or whatever archive at CalArts, I couldn't find videos that played or anything. Not much was responding to my clicks. So there were videos there to be seen?
No, no, I think that there was maybe one the excerpt of the teleconcert, but you viewed it, I think, a while ago.
Saw the negative, the photos, but nothing else on the other. I think there were two other links. There were things there. The pages were pretty blank, and whatever looked like something you could click on, it wouldn't go anywhere for me. I don't know.
Maybe should try again. So then making the jump to early 90s. So the first time you met Mark, as you mentioned, he was working on some kind of phone.
He was at CalArts, and he and Don were a number. They eventually got married and created Troika Ranch once they left LA, went to New York and the big time, and MIDI Dancer and all that kind of stuff, and the stuff that he's still developing now. We're in kind of contact sometimes. He and Don separated at some point. But no, they just came into an evening at the Electronic Cafe, and we started talking, and he was telling me what he was doing. I said, well, why don't you come in and we'll do some stuff? And the first thing we did was with Don and another dancer at the Highways Theater next to us, two different places. We're always doing this composite image stuff. We think it's pretty amazing. And they did a performance. And then, you know, they kept coming back. They developed a couple of projects in the same, well, no, sometimes the dancers were in the same room. But anyway, we did a number of things which wasn't for an audience. They would come and we could work out things. And then when CalArts moved in, he wasn't one of the soldiers like helping make things work, I don't think. On occasions he was. But and then so when we did some large global events funded by corporations or whatever, and the Viacom thing, they came, and he realized what we were doing. That's when he wrote the MIDI phone software to move the MIDI data over modems. So he wrote a lot of bits of software, and that was a gift to us. And then I don't know, it was busy, and they graduated, and I think they had Delan, a friend in New York who we always linked up with on a couple of occasions with the data suit, and eventually they moved to New York. Now he's in Europe somewhere, and I don't know where Don is, but he's still developing his software, you know, for the MIDI dancer kinds of things, making things work. And I don't know if he's doing it in virtual spaces or if it's just stage. It's just getting all the music and all the percussions and all the lights and the things. And yeah, his MIDI dance, we could hook them up to other devices so that we could change the lighting in the other people's room and all kinds of stuff like that. So it was a pretty versatile piece of software.
And yeah, could you recollect what was the first event in affiliation, not in affiliation, that the CEAIT basically brought to ECI? I think there was.
Well, going backwards, it was Viacom, and then there were things that he did with CalArts when he was presenting his stuff. And then the first two I know we did in you know, like a lab situation. There wasn't an audience, you know. We were just sort of like training wheels, you know. And I don't know, it's probable, but yeah, he did we did a thing with the VR special interest group. They came and did a MIDI dancer performance. We didn't do a tele thing. It was just local. It was a demonstration of the MIDI dancer outfit and how it worked.
Okay. Yeah, so on the slides, and I can share the screen if it would be helpful. I think the earliest documentation, it dates back to November of 1990.
November 1990.
Yeah. So this one, here's the Morton.
Oh, that's the video harp. See that thing?
Yeah, there was a performer that we couldn't recognize. Here's the mark. And don't you remember who was the person performing on harp?
Oh, no.
Yeah, here she is.
I remember the guy doing it. I don't remember this. Who was she?
No, I don't have an idea. I was wondering.
Oh.
Because she doesn't appear anywhere else.
My memory of it is that it was definitely a guy was the first demonstration of it, and so this may have, I may have walked out of the room, I don't know. But yeah, they came in with a couple of wacky it kind of looked like a trumpet, but it was electric, and you turned a knob on the end of it. They had all these wacky musical instruments.
Mm-hmm. And this should be some other thing happening in October 1991.
The best chance for me to recall is if it was, and probably not, on on the reviews of the years that we looked at earlier. So this could have been any of a number of years of Mort standing in front of a mic, sometimes confused. And those are, yeah, those, so you top 1, 2, 3, the Discoveer keyboard moving, and to the left of it is it looks like some sort of a electronic wire harness device or something. I don't know.
Again, I just I think the only events I have programmed for programs and is the teleconcert, and the other one is the celebration of the CalArts 25 years anniversary, when Alvin Lucier, Morton, and I think someone else were performing at Electronic Cafe, and that's basically it. So it's really challenging to recognize.
Well, for several years, it was like, I don't even remember this. It wasn't every month. It was a few times, 4, 5 times a year. And so I guess we did it until 97, starting 90 to 97, which was longer than I thought it was. This, apart from having Mort in the picture, it would look like any day at Electronic Cafe.
Yeah, there is Mark, I think, helping.
Yeah, that looks like Mark. But there were press releases for every show, every gig, every event.
Were they self-published, or was there
Well, there were press releases, and then the press would write about it. They would, or not. They might put the notice in the local newspaper or the LA Weekly, or one of the local rags promotion places where people go to find out what's going on culturally.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they wrote up an original press release, gave it to the press, and see if they could, publish it. There's got to be a list of, or not. Maybe, I would think somewhere there is a press release for maybe not the first year, I don't know, but later in the years, yeah, there were press releases. There's got to be somewhere. And that would tell you who, what, when, and why.
Usually, I mean, I don't even know if those are preserved anywhere. Okay.
How accessible is the stuff of this archive available at CalArts, or is it at CalArts? Is it in Santa Fe?
No, I think there shouldn't be anything at Santa Fe. So the kitchen passed its archive, the older stuff, to Getty, and that's how I've accessed teleconcert tapes. Yeah, David has only, I think, the audio tape or cassette and video for the teleconcert. So again, only the main events. And with the CalArts, I mean, I don't know. I'm not even sure it's accessible for researchers. So it's kind of a black box. It's unknown what is there. Maybe they kept nothing. They always run out of space.
Yeah, the kitchen became an electronic cafe, and they jumped in with both feet, and we did a few things with them, and eventually, I don't know if the last thing we did with them was about Barbie. A lady wrote a book about Barbie and its whole cultural impact, which is still happening apparently. It's amazing. They had the author there at the kitchen, and what we found were the people called down in San Diego the Barbie Liberation Front. And what they would do, they would go in to toy stores and shoplift Barbies and Kens. Ken, the military guy, maybe he had a different name. But they'd take them apart and switch the voices and put the army guy in Barbie and the Barbie and the army guy, and then sneak them back into the stores. And they were totally irreverent, and got the author in New York just all pissed off and upset. And everybody turned against the author, and they were for the Liberation Front, you know. I think that was the last thing we did. There's many stories.
Yeah. A bit taking the sidetrack, the opera of Robert Ashley that I've just found out that took place partly at Electronic Cafe Empire of 95. Do you have any memory of it?
Empire
Opera of Robert Ashley. It took place in 95. I don't know. Okay. Maybe I will find a program quickly.
I have forgotten more than I remember. It's just too much stuff. Oh, what was I going to tell you?
I think on the side of in Santa Monica should be Jacqueline Humbert and Sam Ashley perhaps performing, and on the other side at the kitchen there should be, I think, Tom Buckner and John LaBarbera.
One name I remember. No recollection of that. Was it a CalArts thing?
No, that wasn't, I think, related to. Where is it? Yeah, I see the press release, but not the opera.
We recorded everything on CEAIT or Super VHS, and Super VHS had 2-hour tapes, so a lot of it was done. I just mailed a truckload of videotapes up to Stanford, not just like 2 years ago. Let them deal with it, because they can. They build their own machines to restore old videotapes, and they're good at it. I don't know if they're digitizing our stuff or what, quite frankly. A lot of times they just put them into boxes. Box number 1 through 12 is video.
Yeah, I know. I did myself. So I hope it's seen. So that's the program for that event, Empire. It should be taking place at November 95. That's
Okay,
the program by the kitchen.
This is the kitchen's press release.
Yes.
They were a little more organized than Morton Company. They have to be.
Here you are in the last paragraph in the middle, electronic cafe and the kitchen, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm. I guess that's before they became, they're the only people we charged. Everybody else was free in the world. But an institution like the kitchen, going back to the Veselkas, who we know, I don't know what we charged them, $2,000 or something. No, that's another one that's just not in the old gray matter. Well, a lot of notes. Yeah.
Well, that was mostly about performers.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's important.
Yeah, and there's just one review of Kyle Gann that I saw. Singers Sam Ashley and Jacqueline Humbert woke up behind them a video screen live from Santa Monica, the four standing calmly in a row as to
3,000 miles apart.
Mhm.
That was a big deal then. Hines and Campbell. Where'd you get that from?
Oh, it just occasionally, just gathering whatever is on the web about
Online?
Jacqueline Humbert, and it popped up. So back to CEAIT, do you have an impression who were mostly in the audience, who were the attendees of the CEAIT events, other CalArtians or?
Regulars,
Yes.
not related to their kind of stuff, and a lot of people from CalArts, students and stuff, students of the class. They probably had to be there or get get an F or something.
Okay.
So yeah, it was pretty full all the time, but it was always pretty full. Sometimes there weren't anybody. I mean, not for the CalArts things, but too many things. But usually it was pretty jammed. It would hold. People had to be very close to each other, but it would hold about, I don't know, 125 people. That's about it.
Wow. And in that year when the Northridge earthquake took place, so you mentioned that they held their classes for about a year.
They made us faculty, or we offered a class in telecollaborative arts. And so we had about 10 students. And they did some they did some pieces. I think they probably recorded, and things were humming along, and it was getting, let's see, what time?
It should have been 94 to 95.
When the month?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it was what I sent. I can't remember, but it was I don't know. We did several months, and then then the earthquake happened, and then they couldn't get there. It was an extra 50 or 60 miles to drive around to the east and back into LA the hard way. Yeah, that earthquake, we had a lot of things on wheels so we could move things around, and of course they had cables and harnessed, and that saved us. So things kind of wiggled around on the floor, and the things that didn't wiggle around, we lost a couple of video monitors and stuff. So Santa Monica got hit pretty bad, and we were living there upstairs, and there had been an article written about us on the cover of a local culture magazine. but on the cover, it had something about an earthquake.
Mhm.
And we had a stack of those at the top of the stairs upstairs. When the earthquake happened, this bundle snapped open and spread all the way down the steps. And as we were going downstairs, it was like earthquake, earthquake, earthquake on the cover of the magazine. And we got our hair messed up a little bit, but we got through it pretty good. A lot of places in LA got trashed. I mean, Santa Monica. It was a doozy. So we went outside the building to look around, and the power lines were all red, just glowing red. And then one of our neighbors was going around with a candle, and we said, "Put the fire out. There might be a gas leak." You know what I mean? Yeah, that's a day to remember. Viacom called, said, "Are you guys okay?" Said,
Yeah.
"We're okay."
And don't you remember whose idea it was to bring the students to ECI? Was it David? I mean, I assume he was a dean.
Well, they had a class there, and then we had our class, and so I think it was suggested that you students need to show up and see these demonstrations, because they weren't doing that at CalArts. We had the facilities; they didn't have the
Yeah, yeah.
stuff.
Okay. And in terms of, so I was asking in relation to the funders, to the companies that were bringing money, whether there was any kind of agenda that they're trying to promote. Was there, again, to your subjective extent, any kind of main ideas or a set of ideas that the CEAIT as the entity was trying to, I don't know, share with the audience and outside of it?
Well, MCI, for example, is just a carrier, right?
Mhm.
But they had broadband networks and stuff like that. So the people with the picture tell motion capture video phones, and you could drive the camera in the other location, and all this technology that we were using
Mhm.
was to be showcased on their global network. And so they came to us because we were creatively animating that stuff rather than people having electronic meetings sitting there with a long table and chairs and people reading reports and stuff like that. So we were the fun thing, and they paid us, and there were a lot of things like that. So um, we were one-stop shopping. I mean, there was nothing else but business conferencing. No one was singing and dancing. So we was a singing and dancing thing, and we did collaborative music, and we called them music. If the lag was too much and they couldn't synchronize, we would move to what we called the musical conversation, whereas one location with musicians would play a lick, and then the other locations would answer with their lick, et cetera, et cetera. A daisy chain kind of a thing when it couldn't happen synchronously.
Well, and the sort of the part and the aspect I cannot avoid touching. So could you just again tell, you may be as critical as you wish about this sort of the split between ECI and CEAIT, as you mentioned that there was some kind of misrepresentation in the news or in the
Well, also, um, it was, it was kind of the David and Mort kind of aesthetic that was kind of like, okay, more of this, you know, ping, bing, bing. And and it took up days to set up. You know, the trucks would come in with pianos and all of that kind. And it was a big setup time, and it would take a week to sort of set up. For later on, when it got more and more complicated and more links and more stuff and things like that. And then we would turn it over to them, and it was their show and their stuff. And I thought we were doing more interesting stuff, quite frankly. And there's other things we wanted to do, and it was kind of like I don't know, taking up too much space, and it wasn't. It was beginning to get a bit redundant, and we were getting less interested. And then there was the thing about the press releases. I'm sure they mentioned it, but once their thing kind of got bigger and bigger, we seemed to just be like the filling station or something, you know.
So roughly, yeah.
Yeah, we just I mean, we really didn't need that or care too much. It's just it was just too much of a burden.
Mhm.
And I think the audience for that it was like a special interest group, you know. It was a clique. And we had plenty of cliques, like the VR groups and stuff, doing more actually interesting bleeding edge stuff. And, you know, instead of just animating devices that you can, musical instruments that you can make play together, and then it got boring. And we wanted that week back so we could sleep. Instead of doing him, we slept for a week, once a year, a few times a year.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. We just didn't want to. It's okay. We've got other things to do, and it's more fun than this, you know.
Fair enough. So roughly, am I right of dating like the last event of CEAIT taking place at ECI in 1997? Perhaps what we saw on the Mort's last part, I think, on that video. That should be.
Oh, that might have been.
Yeah.
That would do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, in terms of the CEAIT and its kind of timeline, it's really the most significant and the events that had some output and that ultimately are represented by sources that are taking place at ECI. So it's been hard to date and to identify the end of their activity and when the sort of the main people doing CEAIT changed, but it really looks like CEAIT worked best when they were collaborating with you. And yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if they just dropped the ball too. I don't know if they wandered off to some other resource and continued it, or I don't think they did.
So they couldn't really continue.
I don't. They didn't have much more to offer, quite frankly. You know, remote pianos, da da da, blah blah blah. You know, been there, done that. You know, and that's kind of sad because I mean, we had fun. You know, it was good, but it was just becoming the same.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, again, my to my extent up to 90. So there's this kind of weird Mars proposal of David from 98 that exists out of context, that was on behalf of CEAIT, but really there wasn't much of the output up to the 97, I guess. They see it up to that after they lost the connection with you. They sort of, the people who were doing that changed. Mark went away, Mort also retired, David got into the deanship.
Yeah, it just came apart.
Yes, and it continued as a sort of as a series of festivals. I think Clay Chaplin and Tom Earp, who were then at CalArts both, they took over for a while, but barely the kind of the most sparkling events in the history of CEAIT. I think they were mostly taking place in 94, 95. Again, it's interesting that, especially, well, David, that you didn't take advantage of sort of your expertise and facilities, because he was working on his brainwave opera over those years, and he presented it at LACMA instead of trying to do something with ECI. You could bring it to another level. I don't know.
Well, the first couple of years were great, because we were being exposed to these wacky instruments, and then we were creatively animating the network with Mark's, and having machines control other things. Then they got some electric Christmas bells, ding ding, and they came with a little box, and it played Merry Christmas, or whatever. And they had them hooked up to a synthesizer with somebody back in New York. And there was one event from south of France. There was a group there that we did a couple of things with. They did. We did. What city was it? It doesn't matter. A coastal city in southern France. Some guy wrote some music for the Amazon, and he was going to play it from Nice. And I guess he partnered up with some other guy, a chemist, who went into the lab and tried to reproduce the smells of the Amazon. And they sent us these aerosol sprayers that was hooked up to the internet. And as the music came to us, they would spray this horrible smell into our place. We actually shut them off. But the whole idea was to have the music and the visceral, olfactory experience.
That's amazing. I think yeah, it's interesting if it wasn't really captured in the press or whatever, because in late, I think, 2000s, David Edwards from Harvard, he was sort of in use with his phones, with the sort of transmission of olfactory experience over distance, whatever. So again, it just looks like ACI was really ahead of time in so many respects.
Yeah, well, we created that context. Otherwise, that everybody'd be in the same room.
Yeah, amazing. So I think that's it in terms of the questions.